Hello my spooky crew and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. Welcome to my spooky corner of the internet. So there has been something on my mind for quite some time. I've actually been thinking about it for years, and I know Kindred Spirits recently covered this in one of their episodes, and I'm glad it's starting to make more mainstream paranormal TV because I have to wonder, are paranormal investigators creating their own ghosts? Meaning, are we manifesting these hauntings into reality? When you think about it, storytelling, historical research, telling legends, reading lore, it's all a part of the process. We read reports of hauntings at different locations. It's just part of the game. And then of course we usually dive deeper into those stories to make sure that they're actually true. I mean, these elements, research, paranormal investigating go hand in hand. They go together like peanut butter and jelly or chicken nuggets and barbecue sauce. Now I'm hungry. Our minds are such powerful tools. Is it possible that our minds are so powerful that we can manifest our own ghost? Or can we manifest our own self-fulfilling prophecy, like we go into a famous haunted location, anticipating talking to the ghost of Little Sally, and then we get activity and we assume that it's Little Sally. But before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and be sure to hit that notification bell, because if you subscribe to my channel and you don't hit the bell, you may never hear from me again. So that notification bell just gives you a nice little reminder that I uploaded a new video. And also, I upload every Monday night. And be sure to join the live chat every Monday night when a new video premieres. And if you want more spooky stuff like ghost hunting tips, ghost stories, and all that good stuff, then be sure to hit up my website at thespookystuff.com. Okay, let's get started. So we need research and lore and stories to better understand what's going on behind the reports of alleged hauntings. But is it possible that as more people learn these stories, could that energy all collect and come together and create a haunting? Could this very much explain activity from a ghost of a person that never existed? Like, let's say Little Sally had never been a real person, and so many people had Little Sally in their heads when they go into a haunted location, hoping that she would come and communicate that they ended up creating Little Sally. I mean, let's consider the popular locations like Trans-Allegheny, Waverly Hills, and all that. They tell the same stories almost every night, and we all know these stories for years. I mean, it's on the internet. Just Google like the haunted location and the ghost story behind it. Boom, there's the story right there. Multiple nights per year, like possibly 365 nights per year, telling the same stories, creating that similar mindset and creating that expectation. Could this haunting be coming from our own minds? Now take Gettysburg as an example. So people visit the battlefield. History is constantly on repeat in Gettysburg, from reenactments to films to paintings, museums, ghost walks, even just sitting in a restaurant. Gettysburg's story is always being told, and people are constantly anticipating paranormal activity at Gettysburg. That energy has not had a chance to just rest and chill out. So what if these apparitions that we're seeing in Gettysburg of all these soldiers, I mean, what if they're coming from us? Huh. Now, the manifestation of thoughts and intentions is becoming widely popular these days. I mean, on social media like Instagram and TikTok, there are creators giving us exercises and meditations on manifestation and intentions. And while paranormal investigators aren't necessarily going through like this intense process, many do set their intentions ahead of time when it comes to what entities they want to engage with. Now, they may picture specific people in their heads or just a general idea of who they might want to interact with. So there is a term for this. We have Thoughtforms and tulpas. Now, a lot of people think Thoughtforms and tulpas are the same thing. Now, there's a fine line to differentiate the two. So all tulpas are Thoughtforms, but not all Thoughtforms are tulpas. Clear as mud? So tulpa is a Tibetan word for a being that was created through mental discipline. So meaning it takes intense thought and concentration to manifest an entity. And there's a specific intention behind a tulpa. Its creation is not an accident. Like, you are going to create something. You have this in your head. And I've also read that tulpas are created through dismantling one's own psyche and then piecing it back together with parts of yourself to create this being. So you're like creating and Frankensteining your own tulpa with pieces of yourself. So thought forms seem to happen with similar intention, but it seems more accidental, at least in my opinion. Now, there doesn't seem to be a part of yourself used during that creation, at least not intentionally. So let's say, for example, a bunch of people are investigating the ghost of Little Sally. That's apparently the ghost's name today. A bunch of people are investigating the ghost of Little Sally at a haunted asylum, and they may be unintentionally creating Little Sally herself. But Sally is a real person who passed a long time ago, was never a child. Real Sally's spirit is no longer haunting the asylum, but this Frankenstein's monster version of Little Sally that has been created from all of the thoughts and intentions of these paranormal investigators is what's haunting this asylum now. Make sense? Clear as mud? Okay. And I've also read too that elementals are thought forms, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. So you may be thinking, Alex, this is a load of BS. There's no way that this is possible. Well, there was a group of people that test this out. They tried it out. In 1972, in Toronto, Canada, a man by the name of Dr. A.R. George Owen and the Toronto Society for Psychical Research did this experiment that is famously known as the Philip experiment. Now, this experiment was to determine whether subjects could communicate with fictionalized ghosts through human will, meaning we're making up a ghost, let's see if we can talk to it. And according to Dr. Owen, he believed that ghosts have an objective reality, but they are created out of the minds that see them. Basically meaning we create our own ghosts that we're investigating. So Dr. Owen, who is a mathematical geneticist, hope I said that right, he led the experiment and it was overseen by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Joel Witten. So he was more of like overseeing and just observing the process. The idea of the experiment would be that participants would make up a fictionalized ghost and then try to make contact during seances. And in case you're wondering, yes, the 2014 film The Quiet Ones is loosely based on the Philip experiment. So there were 8 participants in this experiment, one of them being Dr. Owen's wife. Her name was Iris Owen. And the other participants included a former chairperson of Mensa, an industrial designer, a heating engineer, an accountant, a bookkeeper, and a sociology student, and the wife of another participant. And all of the people who participated were members of the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. So they were all part of TSPR. First step was the group had to create a backstory for their ghost, and they decided that the ghost's name would be Philip Aylesford, and he lived during the 1600s during the time of Oliver Cromwell, and he was an aristocrat. He was married, but he was in a very unhappy marriage with a woman named Dorothea, and he had a daughter with her. And then one day Philip rode by a gypsy encampment and fell in love with a woman named Margot. I don't like the word gypsy, but that's the word that they're using, so I'm using it for the purpose of this video. Philip falls in love with Margot. He brings Margot back to secretly live in his gatehouse, and then they have an affair. Ooh la la. And then eventually, Dorothea found out and accused Margot of witchcraft. Now, afraid of losing his status and his possessions, Philip does nothing. He just throws Margot under the bus. And tragically, Margot was sentenced to death and burned at the stake. Now, burdened by guilt and remorse, Philip ended up committing suicide at the age of 30. So Philip was kind of a coward. So anyway, again, this is all made up. This is the story that the group came up with when it came to Philip. Fascinating, right? Starting September of 1972, the group started meeting regularly. I think they started meeting weekly. They would have informal gatherings where they discussed Philip, they meditated on him, and they visualized him. And they went on for about a year, and there were no results, but it probably should be noted that the room was fully lit, so it was a bright room, and sometimes the participants said that they thought they felt a presence in the room, but there was nothing extraordinary that would make them think that it was Philip. Then Dr. Owen and the group, they decided to change the dynamic of their atmosphere after a year of no results, and they recreated a traditional seance environment. So they dimmed the lights, they sang songs, and they pictured where Philip would have lived and what he looked like, and they also got some antiques from the time period. I mean, it was legit. And this seemed to have worked. Philip made himself known through a distant rap on the table, and in traditional seance fashion, the group had Philip rap once for yes and twice for no, and eventually Philip was able to dim the lights on his own, he could create a cold breeze, and he was doing all this amazing psychokinetic phenomena. And the group even did a demonstration in front of 50 people, and Philip performed, Philip delivered. But the group was never able to make Philip materialize, so he never appeared as a full-bodied apparition. I think that was one of the big goals of this group. Now, there were some criticisms with the experiment, like the lack of a control environment and just the way that the experiment was overseen was a bit problematic. Anyway, TSPR was so impressed with their results with the Philip experiment that they attempted the experiment a few more times with different spirits. So they managed to create and contact a French-Canadian spy that they named Lilith. But instead of taking over a year to contact Lilith, Lilith made herself known in just 5 weeks. And the group also created a man from the future named Axel, which is a whole other thing if we want to go with the idea that time isn't linear. Oof. And they also created a ghost named Sebastian, who was a medieval alchemist. Yeah, it's interesting how they were able to do all of this and just kind of create ghosts. Oh, I forgot about one more experiment that was also made in the spirit of the Philip experiment, but this time it was in Australia. A group conducted what became known as the Skippy Experiment. Had nothing to do with peanut butter. With 6 participants, the group created the ghost of a 14-year-old girl named Skippy Carmichael. And according to the group, Skippy communicated mainly using raps and scratching sounds. So it should be noted, I always love to tell the story, so I actually got to see one of the tables that was used for the Philip experiment in person when I went up to the Ghost Excavation Conference in Bedford, Pennsylvania. A woman who owned one of the tables from the Philip experiment actually brought it with her, and so I got to see it in person and I got to touch it and stuff. It was really cool. And also Rosemary Ellen Guiley was at this same conference, so I got to meet her in person, which was a true honor before she passed. All right, so my thoughts on this. Now, could it be that this was all just in the participants' minds? Now, they didn't start getting results until they started dimming the lights. Now, could it be possible that dimming the lights created a more welcoming environment for Philip, the fake ghost? Sure, but I think when they started dimming the lights and recreating that traditional seance environment, it made the participants start thinking, ooh, spooky. And I think maybe this set up a different type of expectation, and when you start putting people in that environment, then they will start noticing things. Maybe when the lights were dim, they started to notice the little things more. Not necessarily saying it's paranormal, but you know, that intention is there. Again, this makes me think about some of the more popular haunted locations. I mean, are we truly talking to sentient beings who once lived as people, or are we talking to something that we have all collectively created through storytelling, media exposure? I mean, are we communicating with Thoughtforms in haunted locations now? These stories are readily available on the internet. I mean, they're more available than ever. Like I said, go to Google and you can find these stories. And we will continue to read, meditate, and regurgitate these stories until we join the other side. And even if we do set up our intentions, could it be possible that we are creating our own ghosts? I can't manipulate a K2 meter with just my brain right now. I mean, I could try, but it's not going to work. And I can't manipulate a REM pod with my own mind either. So I have a really hard time believing that ghosts could actually do this. I mean, I've seen it happen, but again, I'm skeptical. I mean, if it's our consciousness manipulating the equipment, who's to say that it's not us when we're ghost hunting because we want that K2 meter to light up? What if it's us that's lighting it up? This was a very messy string of thought. I hope you were all able to follow. This is something to think about. Let me know what you think. Do you think that we possibly create our own ghosts and our own spirits and our own paranormal activity? Let me know in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and again, turn on that notification bell so you know when I upload a new video. And of course, as always, share this with your friends and family if they enjoy the spooky stuff too. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next round.